morning. I am back with our bunch of questions we still need to address. So the next question I had was in Afrikaans. It read, I'm going to read it the way it's written here, is jy is vet. Hoe kan jy netbal speel of ver hardloop? So what that means in English is you are overweight or fat. How can you play netball or run far? Now, these are a bunch of questions. I did a session in high school, and I asked them to write down something that somebody told them that made them feel a certain way, triggered an emotion of some kind, a negative emotion. And obviously, we never had time to work through all of these as examples throughout the sessions, but that's the aim, is to address it here and give answers here. Okay. So when somebody tells you something or when you hear something, it doesn't really matter whether somebody is standing there and voice it to you or whether it's a voice in your head that you're hearing. It's still going to elicit the same emotional response and a feeling, a negative feeling, an emotional response that you don't like. So when we talk about ourselves, we often use images. We often use phrases like, for the most part, a phrase like our self-image. Now, our self-image only represents an image, a picture, literally. It represents a picture of ourselves. And actually, a side note, that is exactly what's happening on social media, is people only have an image, and then they identify an individual based on that one image, but doesn't take into, let's say, 16 years worth of living into account. It doesn't take into account all of that individual's experiences and all of that stuff over 16 years, if you are 16 years old, because people only base their perception and their judgment and their labeling on that one image. But yeah, that's just a side note. So that's actually exactly what's happening on social media. So what we do exactly the same subconsciously. When we, and sorry, just to come back to the word, the concept or the word of self-image, you would agree that in that case, the word self-image is not a very accurate description of ourselves, because we do not only use a picture of ourselves to identify qualities about ourselves, identify our identity, personalities, and things like that about ourselves. And a way better word to use is what we call self-concept, because self-concept is the concept we have about ourselves and about everything and the things that we believe about ourselves that encompasses our entire self-concept. Now, how does it happen for us to feel a certain way about ourselves? We have a bunch of experiences throughout our lives, from the day we are born, and even in our mother's womb, because our brain interpret these experiences through our five senses. So our brain cannot interpret all of the information. I mean, as you sit there are tons and bits of gazillion bits of information coming in from the environment through our five senses. Our brain has to categorize it in order for it to make sense, or in order to know whether it should pay attention to something or not pay attention to something, and just not like process it in your brain. So what it will do with all of the information that comes in, it will categorize it, it will file it, it will make a judgment about it, and it will label it. Those are the things that your brain will do with it. Similar to a filing cabinet, where you might have a bunch of pink files on the filing cabinet. If most of you probably don't even work with paper or paper files anymore, but where you have pink files, and you know, oh, okay, all of those pink files are for my maths, and you have a bunch of blue files, and all of those blue files are for your science and everything related to science. So our brain does exactly that. It takes all of the information, it interprets it, and it puts it into a filing cabinet. It will judge what it is. Okay, these are pink, so it's all maths. It will plaster a label on it. That's exactly what our brain does. So as we live through life, we make all of these markouts, quote unquote, which we call experiences, and we give a meaning to that experience. So similar, pink files, you know it's maths. That's the meaning that you've given to those files. Once we have categorized these experiences, and our brain categorized these experiences, we start to think then, okay, but how does these experiences relate to me? Let's say every single December, your family takes you, go to Mauritius. Every single family, December holiday is spent in Mauritius. Now you start to relate Mauritius or identify how does that relate to me and things like that. So that's what we actually do subconsciously with experiences. When something happens, like in this case, somebody told her, jy is vet, hoe kan jy netbal speel of ver hardloop? So somebody told her, you are overweight, how can you even play netball? When something like that happens, it starts to find a similar incident that's filed in your brain in a filing cabinet, and it sort of go in and say, okay, but how should I respond to this? And then you create a certain feeling or a thought will be created based on what this person has told you, based on your past experiences, and based on that category of that experiences. Obviously, these feelings and emotions can be negative, and it is important for us to understand that these emotions and feelings are not thought through rationally. It's a subconscious process. It happens unconscious actually, but it happens immediately. Thoughts and feelings come and go. It happens immediately. It's unconscious, and you cannot positively think yourself out of that state. It's not like you can positively. It's not immune to positive thinking. That's what I want to get to. So when you have these negative thoughts and feelings that come in and that come and go, it's not like you can sit there and think positive and force yourself to think positive and then it will disappear. That hardly ever works. So what do we want to do then with thoughts like these? So the first thing you want to do is you want to recognize that you have a negative emotion or a feeling because of what somebody said or did, right? So, and this is an exercise you can do a little bit later the day when you've calmed down, whatever the case might be, but at least recognize that your state has changed. You feel something negative or you have a negative emotion. And try to identify what that emotion is. Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it regret? It can be anything, but try and identify what that emotion is. And you can actually write all of these things down also if you like to journal. It will help a lot. Now, in sports, we often use a method we call dissociation to help athletes to prevent negative emotions from controlling them. First step is to recognize that there was a negative emotion or a feeling and to identify what it was. Now, I want you in that situation to think about the scenario that has happened and go back all the way up until the point where you can remember in that experience where you felt fine, you felt happy, you felt upbeat, you felt okay, nothing was bothering you in that moment, and play that movie forward until the point where it happened, where you've experienced that negative emotional feeling. So that is important, okay? So now what you want to do is you want to look at, and you can do that by, you want to be the observer and look at this experience from the outside. You can do that any way you want. You can imagine you're sitting in a movie theater and you see this experience now playing out on the big screen is sometimes the easiest for people to do. Or you can literally imagine like you're the fly on the wall and you look at these two people, one person walking up to the other person. So that's where you want to be. You want to be outside of this experience. Okay. So then what you play this experience of forward until the moment you started feeling that negative emotional feeling. And I want you to play it backwards. Rewind the movie. So, like on a movie screen, play it forward and rewind the movie. And play it forward again and rewind the movie. Now, what I want you to do is find a funny song. It can be an earworm. I don't care what it is. Anything funny. And get that soundtrack and play that movie forward on that silly soundtrack. That is what you want to do. And then what you then do is play that movie backwards 3 to 4 times on that silly soundtrack again. I don't care what soundtrack you pick. It can be the chicken song, it can be PPIP song. I don't care what you get. Get a funny song and play it backwards 3 to 4 times. This process eliminates the intensity of the emotion that you've experienced, and then over time will actually change the meaning you've attached to the experience. Because if you go and listen to a lot of my previous videos, I did an intensive workshop on this topic, as well as to how do we actually give meaning to a feeling or a thought, not a feeling, but a thought that come into our mind. How do we give meaning to that, and how can we change that meaning? Because that meaning is what elicits that negative feeling that you experience. Okay, so tons of videos on my YouTube channel about that. So, but in any case, this process eliminates the intensity of that emotion that you're experiencing and that emotion that you've attached to that thought about the situation. You do want to check that the process that you followed, that it worked by running through the event in your mind again. So you do the exercise, you sit in the movie theater, you see this experience playing off, you start off by rewinding the experience, rewind it forward, do that 3 to 4 times, find a silly song, a crazy song, and then rewind that movie 3 to 4 times on that song, and that scene on that song. And then you want to think about the scenario, the way it happened, and if you feel better, that's perfect. If you don't feel better and the intensity of the emotion is still there, it just means that you have to do it more times. You can do it 6 more times, 7 more times, take a break, do it a few more times. The whole idea behind this exercise is for you to be able eventually to dissociate yourself from what people are saying. In other words, you actually want to change the meaning of what they are saying, the meaning you interpret, the way you interpret it, and the meaning you attach to that thought that you have after they've said something to you. So that's the whole process and the whole idea behind this. You do want to be able to do that even in the moment. Eventually, once somebody told you something, remember the thought is still going to come. Thoughts come and go. You can't stop and control your thoughts. That initial thought might come still come and want to tell you that thought of, oh my goodness, I am overweight, I am slow, I cannot run. But in that moment, you want to teach your neurological system that it should not attach a meaning to that, and it will let the thought go. As soon as it came in, it will let it go. And that's eventually what you want to learn. And because as an athlete, there are going to be fouls on the field and on the court. There are going to be unfair events that's going to happen. People will be selected for teams. The judge or the coach or the umpire or the referee is going to blow you for something which you haven't done. Those things happen on field, on court, in the match, in competition, and you want to teach your body not to respond to that. You want to teach your brain not to attach a meaning to that thought that comes to your mind, so that you can shake it off and go on. And this is a very, very good way to do that. Right. So I will speak to you again with the next question, and have an awesome weekend.